Hello and welcome. My name is Deborah Guthrie, and joining me today is Director of Parks and Recreation, LuAnn Maisner. Thank you so much for joining me.
You bet.
So this is a little bit of a different interview. Normally we are interviewing LuAnn about the park system, about the trails, land preserves, recreation. Today, LuAnn is joining us for our women's series, our Women's Leadership Series, in honor of March's Women's History Month. And so we're kind of getting to know LuAnn a little bit behind the scenes, beyond the parks.
Right.
So thank you. I'm so
bet.
glad you're here. Let's talk about, you've been with the township for 20 years.
Almost 20 years.
Almost 20 years. Let's talk about how your career began before Meridian Township. How did you get involved in parks in the first place?
Sure. Well, you graduate from high school, and then you decide, when you go into college, a lot of times you don't really know what you want to get into. And I started out at community college, Muskegon Community College, and I'd always played sports growing up. Grew up in a neighborhood with all boys, always played sports. And so played through high school, and so in college I played basketball and tennis. And I was able to play at Muskegon Community College. And while I was there, had some really great instructors that really got me thinking about parks and recreation. And what a great profession to be in, where you can make a difference in a community and you can make a difference in people's lives. And so I thought that's for me. That's really the profession for me. So then I went on to Grand Valley State University and played tennis there. And then pursued a degree in Parks and Recreation Administration and a minor in business. And so when I got out of college, there wasn't a job readily available, but I had been a tennis coach at a local high school, and our indoor tennis club needed a pro and manager. So that was my first job out of college, was an indoor teaching tennis pro and a manager of a facility. My dream job was to work for the City of Muskegon Parks and Recreation Department. I had been involved in their activities all through my youth, and played a lot of adult softball and umpired softball. I was one of the first women umpires in the City of Muskegon.
Wow.
And and Muskegon's softball program was huge. We had over 300 teams that played on 17 fields 5 nights a week. It was a huge program for the city. And few years, I think I was with the tennis club for 6 years, and then a job opened up with the City of Muskegon. Yes. And so then I was the marina and recreation supervisor. And the marina part was fun because I had a boat already and was familiar with that piece of it. And then with recreation, it was all the youth and adult recreation, special event coordination, and those types of things. And loved my job, loved my job. And I was very familiar with the community, and by working at the tennis club, I had developed connections to have people help with donations and contributions and be sponsors of certain programs and activities. And things were in the beach. I was in charge of the lifeguards at the beach. We had a golf course under a separate management agreement that we played it once every 2 weeks to make sure it was being maintained properly. I mean, this was really a job
Dream job
for LuAnn Price at the time.
Okay.
And so then I ended up dating a guy from Lansing, and we got married, and that's what brought me to the greater Lansing area. And we first lived in Delta Township, and so when I was job searching in this area, the city of DeWitt was looking for their first director of Parks and Recreation. And so I was fortunate to get that job. It was actually a pay cut going to City of DeWitt, but I really wanted to gain administrative experience, writing Parks and Recreation master plans, applying for grants, building parks, presenting to city councils, presenting budgets, those types of things. And so I was able to get amazing experience. I was with the City of DeWitt for 5 years. And I really loved it there. The community was great. Volunteer support was amazing. And then Meridian Township advertised for their first director of Parks and Recreation in 1999. And so that's when I applied, and then I've been here ever since. So that's really been my career path on how I ended up getting into Parks and Recreation, and how I've progressed through being a recreation supervisor when you're at the ground level doing the work, and then progressing to be a director in this fine community.
Would you say you've followed your passion all along your career path?
I do. You know, I thought about, you know, teaching was a possibility because I loved coaching. I loved working with kids. But the Parks and Recreation field offers, like, there's no 2 days ever the same. And I like that variety.
Yeah.
And I like the ability to, you know, if you're like teaching in a school system, it's pretty, you know, defined as to what you will be doing. And I like the idea of being a little more creative,
Yeah.
and doing more things in the community and connecting with the community and the volunteers. And I don't know, I've just really, this has been a perfect job for me. Perfect.
So going back to your umpire experience, you mentioned that you were the only female umpire. How would you describe that experience, being the only female in that?
You know, I would say, fortunately for me, I was heavily involved in softball, and I played at a higher level, and so people knew that I understood the sport. And I started out, you know, working some high school games as well. I worked girls fast pitch, softball, but mainly I worked men's adult slow pitch softball and some women's slow pitch softball is how I started. And but anyway, you know, for the most part, I was accepted. And I think maybe it was because of my experience and background and maybe a little bit of reputation that helped versus someone who really didn't play the game that really wanted to kind of get into the sport and wasn't that familiar with it. So in that regard, I really had a pretty ezy time with it. And it was fun because then slow pitch softball too is a little more recreational and not as serious, although sometimes it could be serious. But one interesting note was back when I was working at the tennis club in the early 80s, the person there who was the managing partner had made a comment about when I think I was asking for a pay increase. And his comment was, well, women don't have to make as much money because men are the breadwinners in the family. I wasn't even married at the time. But I thought that, and that was someone who was older, but back in the early 80s. And now I don't think you would even hear of anybody saying anything like that today. So I think we have come a long way.
I certainly hope we wouldn't hear.
Yeah, that was like, I'll never forget that. That was just really, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
And it's like, you know, I've worked hard, I've earned this education, I've, you know, played in tennis and tournaments my entire life and worked my way to get to this point. And you think that that's not as valuable as what a man would be able to provide in that role.
Because they're supposed to look beyond the gender role
Right.
and look at the experience.
Yeah, and I would say that's probably one of the worst scenarios that I've ever been in. Like I said, on the softball field, whether I'm playing or umpiring, I didn't really have a gender inequity type issue at all.
So did you ever feel like you had to prove yourself as a female?
Absolutely. You've got to be a little bit better. You got to hustle a little bit more and be a little bit better, I think, to be accepted than a man. And I totally believe that, almost even today.
What sort of challenges can you share that you faced in that regard throughout your career?
You know, I've working in government, but as well as, you know, my sports background, you kind of get a thick skin. And you have to, because if you take everything personally, when someone's not happy with something or someone says something to you that could be a little demeaning because maybe you are a woman or whatever, you just need to step it up and come, you know, and be able that be prepared for certain situations. I can't really share anything with you other than I know that I feel like I've worked harder, and I have good energy and excitement, and I think people appreciate that. And even when maybe you do make a mistake or you're not as great in one area, people can overlook that because they know how hard you're trying. But yeah, I just feel that sometimes when you're working in government or even in Parks and Recreation, and when it's sports related, I know I've had staff I've had males work in sports programs, but then have a female come in and had some difficulties with some parents or coaches just because they haven't really proved themselves yet. But they really shouldn't have to prove themselves in this day and age, but it still really happens.
Yeah, it does happen. How when you look back at your career and what you did prior to having a family, and then your success after you raised your girls, what sort of influence and impact do you think your success and your hard work has shown to your girls and their future careers?
That's a great question. I hope, and I really feel I've been a good role model. I know my father, who passed away in 1990, I remember him saying to me that you need to protect your reputation because it takes a lifetime to build and moments to destroy. And I've always made sure that that my girls shared that same. It's like we all work very hard to prove ourselves and to do good things, and that we need to make sure that we continue to do that. There's many people we know that who have been great and have fallen from grace because of something. And I just feel that, you know, I've worked hard to make sure that and I'm sincere with how I deal with people. I'm sincere with how I'm working with my staff, with the community, with our park commission, with the township board. And I take what I do very seriously. And but helping others and making people feel good and be a part. I'm always, you know, and I think maybe that's a woman thing too. We always want to make sure everybody's happy and together and feels a part of things. And I think that really kind of helps women and gives maybe a woman a heads up in the role when you're working with the community. And I know that's something that you're very good at as well. When you know, we're trying to, and I appreciate being here today. And it is hard to talk about yourself, I have to say.
It is.
You know, if we can come here and talk about projects and facilities and programming and my staff, and that's easier than to, I feel like I'm stumbling through this
No,
just
you're
a little
doing
bit.
great.
But
I appreciate you sharing.
But I think, you know, and then, you know, I've received some recognition recently, and my girls have been there, and I think that that I have provided a good base for them to know that they can thrive and become great leaders. And
it's sort of, I want to talk about that award. You recently won an award from NParks, Director of the Year, right?
It was actually the Fellowship Award.
The Fellowship Award. Can you explain what that is a little bit?
Yeah, the Fellowship Award it used to be called the Michigan Recreation and Park Association, which is now called NParks. But it's like a Lifetime Achievement Award, and it's you know, only given in some years they don't give it. Some years they may give two, but it's really when you've hit the pinnacle of your career and you've been a leader in your community. You've been a leader in the state organization. You've helped mentor students and young professionals. And so it's one of those that it's really kind of the pinnacle. It kind of, I think in my acceptance speech, I just said, you know, to me, being able to do good in your community is like reward enough. I mean,
Right.
it is. And I live where I work, and it's all kind of together. And when I see park facilities that are here and our residents are out enjoying those, you know, there's such satisfaction. That's my reward. But winning this award from your peers with a standing ovation is pretty amazing.
And your staff nominated you for this.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Correct.
A former staff member and a current staff member got together and nominated you for this award.
Yeah.
So your team came to my office asking for assistance with putting together a video
Right.
for this award that you were receiving, because some kind of video was getting played or something like that. And the sense that I had from your team, I think, which is what I normally get from them when I meet with them, is a sense of family. And so here you have, you know, at this award ceremony, and I've seen the photos and I've seen the videos from your team, is your at-home family and your Meridian Township family, and having that come together.
Right.
You know, what did that mean to you to have, you know, you have two families, having them all there at
I have to tell you, I accidentally put my home key in my work lock when I open my door, and sometimes I accidentally put my work key in my home lock. So exactly, it has been meshed. My entire career, it has been meshed, because it's really hard as a working mother to not have that flexibility. I mean, my kids would come to the gym with me on Saturday mornings, and they know too when I have night meetings or whatever, they're home with Dad, and that's just kind of been the lifestyle that they've grown accustomed to, and so they've been a part of my career all while they're growing up. And then in the workplace, you know, I just have an amazing team of professionals that work in our Parks and Recreation Department. But my leadership style is not one of being a dictator. And I think everyone has valuable input. And I don't, and I've never pretended to know everything about everything, because I certainly do not. But I have people who know things that they need to know to help me make good decisions. And so I've always valued, and when there's been, even when my boss has asked a question, I may say, you know what, when Jerry Richards was here, I can think of a specific thing. And it's like, I probably know the answer to that, but let me go back and ask my staff, and then I'll get back with you. And I don't think that made me look any less of a leader by not being able to come up with an answer right away. And I've never felt that way. And I have our maintenance staff. I don't know how to replace a piece of sidewalk, but I don't have to know how to repair that. I just need to know that it needs to get done, and what are the tools that they need to do their job. And that's my job, is to make sure that they have what they need to do and get the job done well. And with our recreation staff, I think a lot of times too, my success in being a leader has come from starting at the bottom. And I've done everything I'm asking them to do, so it's not like this new thing that I have no idea what they're doing. I'm extremely familiar with what they're doing it and how they're doing it, and so we have great discussions on new ideas, and I'm all for new ideas and changing things up a little bit. And so I've never, and then we have the environmental piece of our department with Kit and Katie, with our senior park naturalist, and Kelsey Dillon is our park naturalist and stewardship coordinator, and Jane Greenway is our parks and land management coordinator, and they have a whole set of different skills that I do not have. Again, I don't think that makes me a poor leader, because I don't know all that they know, but I use what they know to make the decisions that I need to make. And I think that's kind of been where everyone feels valued in the organization, and my job is to make sure they have the tools they need to get the job done. And that's really kind of how I've led the department.
What are some of the, if you could look back, what are some of the sacrifices you've had to make along the way, if you can recall any?
Boy, that's a tough question. Because I think sometimes when there's sacrifices at the time, maybe they show up later as maybe not being so, that maybe there was greater value in really what you needed to do versus what you wanted to do. I guess I've always just taken the responsibility and the role that I've had with all of my jobs very seriously. And work has always come first. I guess I need to be careful with that.
I know what you mean. I know what you mean when you say that.
But I still know the value of what LuAnn needs to make sure that I can still perform and be a good parent and a good wife and a good boss and coworker. And so I've tried to balance that, and I think Frank Walls, he understands that I like to have fun, and he's, I need to have, make sure that I also adopt your vision of life, because life is too short. And I have a friend battling very serious cancer right now, and it's like you only have one body and you're only here one time, and I just think you need to make the most of life. And you need to make the most of life as a parent, as a spouse, and in the workplace as well, and in your community. And so
work will always be there.
Work will always be there. I mean, I take it very seriously, but it will be there tomorrow.
Yes, it will.
And so when a friend needs me, or someone is in need, or I'm in need, I need to make sure that I take the time for myself. And that's kind of how, and everything has worked out fine so far, adopting that philosophy. So I don't know. I don't really know what else to add on that, other than I've lived a very blessed life. I was so lucky to find a profession that fit my personality to a T, because there's so many people who do things, they don't love their job, they get into a profession, they find out, and they've spent, lawyers and doctors, and they've spent years and years and years of schooling, and they're into something that they don't really see the intrinsic value to. And I think, I thank the Lord every day that I've been, healthy and successful in my job, and I just really love what I do.
If you could give any bit of advice or words of wisdom to females out there who are beginning their career and, starting off and, just thinking of what I'm going to do, what am I going to go to, and what words of advice would you give them?
Boy, I would say that regardless if you're a man or a woman, but mainly more because we're talking about women today, is you just need to really excel, and you need to be the best person you can be. And I think that I have always tried to be the same person every single day. There's not a lot of ups and downs. When people come to the office, they get the same LuAnn Maisner every single day. And you don't see that with both men and women, but I think having that consistency is important. And I would say the emotional part kind of needs to stay home. And you need to stick to the facts, and you need to excel and be social and respectful of everyone, even if they don't share your same views. And I think if you can get along with people in the workplace, and you can do the very best that you possibly can, and have thick skin, because not everything's going to go your way. And you just need to know that, or people are going to say things that are offensive to you, but you just need to, you're doing your best. And as long as you know you're doing the best, your best that you can, then I think you're going to survive. Hey. And so that would be the advice, but then still make sure that you keep time for yourself and your social life as well, because I think you need to have all of those pieces to be successful. You don't want to be too social, you don't want to be too much at work, but there's got to be a balance.
There's a balance.
A balance in your life. That's the word, I guess, that I would suggest. Thick skin, excel at what you do, and have good balance in your life.
Well, thank you, LuAnn. Thank
bet.
you so much for coming on and
I
talking.
appreciate you asking me to be here. Thank you.
I appreciate you sharing. And I want to thank you for watching.